Welcome to the Climate and Coordination RCAST, where every week we'll be discussing topics related to all things climate change and RChain's role in the solution. We will be discussing technologies that can adapt and coordinate massive amounts of data like never before, forming social architectures that grow collective intelligence, sharing and evaluating data planetarily, all while maintaining personal privacy and personal data ownership. A new decentralized economy is forming as we move from the third industrial revolution, digitization, to the fourth, decarbonization. By building a co-op, built on a correct by construction, concurrent, scalable solution, RChain is structured to build out the new technology that will be required for a flourishing regenerative planet. Please join us on this journey.
Welcome, everybody, to the Climate and Coordination RCAST. Today, we have lots of different things to talk about. Lots of articles have come out in the past week that have been really fascinating to all of us over here. And we know that Greg also has an interesting technical update. So we have a lot to get through today. And there was one story that there were a couple different stories that I was going to share. And there was even one that I found late last night, which was actually made me laugh out loud alone in my apartment, which was Jeff Bezos, who is asking for the public's assistance with his Amazon Worker Relief Fund, which is incredible. But I decided not to talk about that today because it is just too depressing. However, this piece of news just came out on The Guardian from March 26th. And I thought this, which is now in the chat, I thought this piece of news would be highly relevant to a lot of the past discussions we've had, as well as what the world is going through with coronavirus. So this is from The Guardian from March 26th. The headline is $2 trillion U.S. coronavirus relief comes without climate stipulations. And it's the subtext, or the byline here is that airlines get a $60 billion bailout, but Pelosi's proposal on having emissions by 2050 is not included. So I just wanted to draw attention to this because I haven't seen anybody anywhere talk about the fact that all of this money, this hundreds of billions of dollars, this trillions of dollars, but of course, not all of it is going to these companies. We've completely, even the Democrats, Nancy Pelosi included, who signed this into law, have completely lost sight of the climate goals that we really wanted to implement. And I thought this was really good reporting because a lot of times when these really significant changes happen, they kind of go under the radar because, obviously we're in a global crisis. But it doesn't mean that we should lose sight of our goals in terms of the climate crisis. And I'm actually writing a blog about this right now. Hopefully that'll go onto the RChain blog next week. But apparently there are a lot of different industries like the American Wind Energy Association, the AWEA, which is really struggling. It says 125,000 families will no longer receive a paycheck from the AWEA. So they're giving a lot of money to the wrong people. And not only are they doing that, but they're also giving it to people with absolutely no strings attached. So anyway, this is a little bit of a downer story, which is why we're starting with at the beginning, because we're just going to keep going up. But I just thought it was really good reporting because nobody really talks about this. So that's that on that. I'm not sure if anybody has any comments to make about this situation, but
well, yeah, to me, here's kind of my interpretation of the first round of stimulus, because apparently it's going to come in waves, and the House is already working on 2, 3, and 4, I believe. So I think that, I mean, we'll have yet to see exactly the details, but it seems like a lot of concessions were made on both sides. And I think that to get the thing through, obviously McConnell's climate firewall was up. So I think, it was kind of like we got to get something through and got to get something through quick. So I think that's kind of the thing. But apparently, even in that article, I think it said that, by the time the fourth package proposal comes out, there will be more climate related things in there.
Yeah, I saw that, what that guy said. He's basically, there was a quote from somebody there who was representing, the industries. I'm not sure if it's oil and gas or just multinational corporations or whatever. But he's just said basically, yeah, we'll get to it later. So I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I don't know. It didn't seem
Well,
to really be very serious of a commitment.
well, even if it was, getting it passed through the Senate will always be difficult because of the obstructionists there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot politically that's going on that would surprise anybody, but I think just the most important thing to learn from this article is that it's so easy for us to lose sight of this incredibly massive slow moving disaster, which is the climate crisis. And I'm just really thinking about that because it's really not in the news very much right now. And except for people who are saying, oh, well, the air is cleaner. And well, yeah, the air is cleaner, but the ice caps are still melting, right? The wildfires will definitely return, So all of these things are still going on. And I think it's just the scale of the climate crisis, which makes it so easy just to forget about, because we have a more acute emergency right now. So, it's kind of like, one of these like really long, never ending wars. You just kind of forget that you're at war because it doesn't really affect you right now. So anyway, I just wanted to share that because I think people should know. That's one reason why I shared it.
Yeah, well, I think that there's another way of looking at the current situation and applying it to climate. Like, there's another article that you sent us this week, Nora, that I think connects to what you're actually talking about. It was that article you sent about from the LA Times. Here's what a coronavirus-like response to the climate crisis would look like. And there were like 8 scientists that they interviewed and chimed in, and I thought there were some good ideas in there, good viewpoints. And one in particular was this woman named Anne Orford, chair of international law, Melbourne Law School. It gets into the idea that, here, I'll just read what she wrote and then comment on it. So Oxford wrote a blog post for the London Review of Books arguing that efforts to rein in the novel coronavirus have led to a significant shift in the way individuals, institutions, and politicians discuss our responsibility to protect vulnerable groups. States that for decades had been committed to neoliberal thinking have slowly begun to embrace such radically old-fashioned ideas as planning for the future, relying on scientific expertise, or calling on their constituents to make sacrifices, she wrote. We can't unlive this, she said. We now know you can ask people to radically do something we wouldn't have thought possible. And we can do that with good humor. So why can't we do that for the environment? So to me, the idea here is that countries that already had preparedness built into their infrastructure and governmental funding fared better with COVID-19. This week, according to the official data at least, the U.S. surpassed China in confirmed cases. I believe this very week will mark the pivot point when China surpassed the U.S. as the biggest economy in the world. Whoever fares better coming out of COVID-19 will be set up better for the post-COVID-19 economy. So what the U.S. will have to rapidly do is put an end to the neoliberal economic fantasy that it has lived under since Reagan, culminating in the Great Orange One. The idea that a government that includes emergency preparedness in its budget is wasting valuable dollars that could be better spent on applying trickle-down economics has turned out to be a perfectly wrong way to think. Experts had been warning government leaders and corporations that the next pandemic is a when, not an if, for years. China was more prepared than the US with an infrastructure of testing clinics and supplies. They still had to build new facilities, but their infrastructure allowed them to do this at a speed that seemed impossibly fast when viewed from the West. We would be wise to apply the same logic to climate change. We were able to introduce laws within days, preventing more than X amount of people from congregating. Absent COVID-19, that would be some pretty serious overreach and violation of basic freedoms. But because virtually everyone agreed that it was the best thing to do for all citizens' health, we implemented it. So, for example, we could introduce laws that make it illegal to own a car with an ICE engine in it in 5 years, and then use government stimulus money to support low-income families to trade in their ICE car for an electric one. The audio industry would love that shit. For technologies that don't quite deliver yet, like the energy storage needs that are required to make solar and wind viable 24/7, we could pour investment money from the government into it, like what Kennedy did with putting a man on the moon, creating a body, NASA, that to this day is developing groundbreaking technology. So, to me, if we were thinking about this straight, we could apply what we have implemented in the last week to a dire emergency, apply those same principles and concepts to climate change and be better positioned in the next economy for it. So to me, it's just rational thinking to implement some of this, the kind of mentality that went into the New Deal, or the kind of mentality that went into, creating a body that would put a man on the moon. Applying that to this crisis, I think it gives us an opportunity. I think there's a window of rational thought that has opened up through this crisis.
I agree. I think you're absolutely right. But it's the challenge that we're facing in this regard is the decades of fake news of climate denial, so there have to be more people dying and more property damaged before people will accept the basic facts of climate.
I think you're right.
There are enough people dying with COVID that that people were willing to accept the changes, and they won't accept the climate changes until it's right in their face.
Yeah, it would have to be some kind of huge cataclysmic event. I mean, it's weird because to me,
No, we've already had huge cataclysmic events. They're
exactly.
Just too remote, right? Like having Australia burn is not the same as having Europe burn, or or North America burn. But it's going to happen, and that's where we have to get to until people get it.
Yeah, Daryl, thank you so much for sharing that. I completely agree.
Yeah, I mean, like, one thing that we can say for certain is that COVID-19 has completely altered the economy. Let's at least say that. And so coming out of COVID-19 will involve some kind of revisiting of the economy. And it's just my hope that some sane heads will kind of have learned something out of this and apply it to the coming out of this, economic devastation, because, rational-minded people will go, oh, well, let's use this as an opportunity to rejig the economy towards the fourth industrial revolution, which is where everything's going, and, apply what we have learned in that sometimes governments do have a better solution than the market for certain things. We'll have to see.
Yes, absolutely. So here's another story. This is a little bit more positive. Just another blockchain advancement, because I'm seeing these every day. This is a little bit more centered around our previous discussions about data. And it's actually from 2 weeks ago, and I'm really surprised that I didn't see it, but I just found it. This is from Cointelegraph. And the headline is Verizon boosts security portfolio with blockchain technology. So this is a pretty interesting situation here. We were talking about Toyota, I think 2 weeks ago, wanting to make some changes to their business using blockchain, some optimizations, I should say. And I'll just read a little bit from this article. So Verizon Business has announced the inclusion of new security services, including 2 new administration and identity access systems using blockchain-based technology. These are Verizon Identity, VID, and Verizon Machine State Integrity, which are modeled with a blockchain within a blockchain environment, according to the U.S. technology firm on March 5th. In the case of VID, identity information is encrypted and subsequently distributed through multiple servers in the blockchain, blah, 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 blah. Kind of explains how it works. So they basically did a study in 2019, and it was an investigation into different data breaches that they experienced. And apparently 29% of them were involved stolen credentials, and they were financially motivated. So basically, they're trying to use blockchain to have less of that in 2020. And apparently this has already been implemented. It has specified that the VID is available to users globally, but the Verizon Machine State Integrity, which maybe I think is a digital place where they're going to store all this information, will be available to US users from the second quarter of 2020. So it'll be interesting to see how this works, but it's definitely being implemented.
That's cool. I mean, I'd love to be talking to them about their blockchain architectures.
Yeah, sadly, it doesn't mention a specific platform they're using here, but if I dug into it, I could probably find out more. But just another case of blockchain technology being adopted by another highly profitable corporation with problems to solve.
There's things about it that seem a little dubious to me, I'm going to say right now.
Sure. What was that?
Well, like the two things that they're talking about, Verizon Identity or VID, and Verizon Machine State Integrity are the two things that they're working on. And the Verizon ID, it's a private blockchain, so it's their shit. So it uses fingerprint-based bio ID. So they get your fingerprint. They now attach your fingerprint to your identity in an immutable registry that they own, that is only viewable by them, and it's stored on their multiple servers. So that's as decentralized as it gets. So I'm just going to say right now, I think that this is kind of an example of when, blockchain technology can not be used for the greater good of humanity.
Is that because you think it's because it's private and they own the data?
Yeah, just anything where there's a company that says, give me your fingerprint, let me attach it on an immutable registry to your ID, and I own that registry. Yeah, I'm going to say I don't like that. I wonder how they're going to
get people's fingerprints, because phones don't really use that anymore. So I wonder how they're going to do that. Or maybe I can just scan it.
Yeah, they'll have a machine. You want an account, give me your finger.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I mean, part of the reason that they're my guess is that the reason they're using blockchain is because Verizon is a big sprawling company, and so they have lots of departments and lots of sub businesses, and so for them, using blockchain in this way is addressing their own internal decentralization.
Right.
I mean, certainly that was the case for a lot of other providers. I mean, I worked with AT&T a long time ago, back when they were still, the Bell conglomerate, and that was that was the case. They were massively decentralized, and syncing up all of their different IT systems was a very, very complicated job for them. So I imagine that this, I could be wrong, but I'm guessing this is why Verizon is doing this. And I agree with you in principle that it's not very blockchainy in terms of the principles that organize blockchain in the first place. And it does sort of smell a little bit like buzzword from the outside, but I'm guessing from the inside they see it as meeting a real business case. And in terms of the way RChain has been looking at going after the enterprise, it's along these lines where we help them build private chain after private chain inside, and then they start realizing that they get more value out of their overall system if they connect those private chains. And then they start to see, well, they get even more value if they connect all of those private chains to some public chains, until you've kind of eaten the enterprise from the inside out. That's the model that I architected RChain for. It's a kind of Trojan horse approach. So where where the value of being connected far outweighs the value of being isolated. And as long as you can provide decent security mechanisms, and that's where Rolang and the type system and the whole object capabilities, the fit between Rolang and object capabilities is hand in glove. But then we go further because our type system allows us to formally check some of those object capability patterns. So that also helps us reconcile, public versus private, because we can make strong, automatically checkable statements about who can see what.
Yeah, because to me, this is really, really kind of connected to I think what's going to become a central issue for, hopefully, for human beings in the coming decades is who owns our data, and how is it used? A couple weeks ago, I saw that YouTube video of Joe Rogan interviewing Elon Musk about AI. AI. And Elon's super depressed. He's so dark. And he's just like, I am really afraid for the future. It's inevitable. It's already here. AI is going to kill us all, kind of thing. And Joe Rogan's like, oh man,
it isn't quite like that. I mean, but I mean, he does say that what we can do is just hope that humanity interfaces with the AI in a way that's reasonable. That humanity finds its place within the larger AI network.
Well, to me, right now, AI is the current projects that are spearheading AI are focused around massive amounts of human input that they're gathering through the illusion that it's the thing that they're giving back to us is free. And so, they're gathering all this data about us in order to feed into the, their algorithms and their AI machine. And so, like, it all comes back to me to that quote I heard Vinay Gupta say at the Mycelia launch. Sure. When he said, "Who controls the database controls the future." And to me, this is why I'm involved with RChain, is that if the database is controlled by us, by the people, where we have control over our own data as individuals, then I think there's hope for AI to evolve in such a way where it actually serves humanity. If we go on another trajectory and humanity goes to a place where it's currently going, where the data is siphoned up into these few silos, and it's those silos that have the data and own the data, and then that gets turned into AI, then we're in trouble. So to me, it's just that black and white. I think that
I think so that's there's some parts of what you're saying that I agree with. I guess what I would say is that there is a responsibility to recognize the cost of generating so much data, right? That's something that I think many people are they have gone to sleep around, and because the large corporations want them to go to sleep around, right? So the large corporations are building these gigantic data centers and these giant distributed supercomputers. Like Google is basically the world's largest supercomputer. That's what it is. And they've had decades to build it out, right? And under the guise of providing the search service and Gmail and these other kinds of services. But the fact is that unless we as a species are willing to pay for all of the coordination activity that goes into running these kinds of data centers, then the person who's willing to pay, in some sense, has the ownership, right? And unless as a society we're willing to pay for it, then it's really not ours. And this is what I keep talking about, is we need to recognize this class of information utilities, and those information utilities have to be afforded the same kinds of considerations as public utilities like water and gas and those the electricity, right? All of that, is typically under some kind of loose public-private arrangement, and we have to recognize that the information utilities are the same way, and that the model for the management of the data has to fall under very similar auspices. Does that make sense? You see what I'm saying?
I think so. I'm just curious as to how you envision it being paid in such a way that we don't destroy humanity.
Well, like I said, it's like I think it has to be a public utility, and once it becomes a public utility, then people pay for it. Either through I think as with RChain, I think you can make it work in this decentralized fashion where you align everybody's interests so that there's the validators are incentivized to validate the transactions on the network. The people are incentivized to transact on the network and store data on the network. And there doesn't have to be
a centralized solution. But once you start to get to the kinds of volumes of data that we're talking about with Google and Amazon, there's a reason why those data centers are there, right? It's because they're necessary in order to support the kind of data storage and compute requirements. So, RChain is not going to skirt around that, right? We're going to have similar a decentralization of these big, massive data centers. This was a vision that Nash and I sketched out. I remember we were sitting at an Indian restaurant not far from Pike Place Market, and when he was talking about his dream of revitalizing the economies of a lot of the stressed states by data center in a box, where people can they're given just what they need to sort of start up a data center, and then run validators on top of that data center. And this is, I think it's a good goal, because it then moves closer to this idea of a decentralized solution that is kind of public-private.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, like to me then, if I understand it right, that kind of just gets back into kind of why we're a co-op.
Yes.
Because,
yeah, exactly.
Because there still has to be some kind of collective system of governance that can afford to pay for all of this and work together to kind of have these kind of data centers. Is that?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. That's right. And it would be great if there was a way to include government in this, right? It would be really nice if public funds could go towards, the decentralization of this public information utility. I think it's actually a match made in heaven, but so far people haven't recognized that. Well, how do I say this? People have recognized the danger of having this data in these just a handful of a few silos, right? That the GDPR is an example of a public response to that danger. The recent hearings that Congress has had with Google and with Facebook and these other providers are examples of people recognizing the danger of having these centralized data silos. So that is, but they haven't seen the next step, which are the practical solutions for that. And that's where blockchain, and in particular the kinds of architectures that RChain is considering, we can play a really, really significant role there.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm talking too much, and maybe we should give airtime to some other notions.
You are not talking too much. This is great. But I would like to know, Daryl, is there anything else? Were there any other pieces that you wanted to share with us? Or Greg, did you want to give your little technical update about RChain? Because we have about 14 minutes left of potential time.
Sure. Daryl, any more from your side?
Nope, nothing more. I would say the floor is yours, Greg.
Yeah.
Well, the thing that is super exciting. There are lots of it's now one of the nicest times to be coding on RChain, because so much of the major problems we've sort of addressed, and now we're starting to really see the fun stuff coming together. Just like on the chain itself, Tomislav is working on a very, very nice solution for last finalized state. And what that is it allows
any would-be validator to walk up to bonded validators and say, give me the last state where everyone agrees that's for certain on the blockchain. Which means that, for RChain, you don't have to go all the way back to the Genesis block to start validating, right? And that's very, very different than the proof of work architectures, where in order to participate as a node in the network, even as a client, you have to catch up. You have to go all the way back to the dawn of time and run all the transactions forward. And that's just, it's insane, right? I know that even in 2016 and 2017, when I was running some nodes for the Ethereum and Bitcoin networks, getting a node to sync up could take hours and sometimes days, depending on the compute hardware and the network connectivity. So that's just ridiculous. It's not sustainable. But that's not how RChain works, and so we do have finalized states. There are states where we have finality for certain, and so that means that you can go up to the last finalized state and say, I want to begin from here, because everything before that doesn't matter. It also means that we can roll off history, right? So we can keep history around for a little bit. There's like more recent history prior to the last finalized state we can keep around for a while, and then further and further back we can start rolling that off to to solutions that take longer and longer to retrieve, so that we don't have to keep this ever growing massive database of information, which is also just simply not sustainable. It won't work. So that's, and he's giving a really nice solution where you can request the last finalized state in piecemeal. So this will be efficient, right? The state, which might be massive, can be delivered in chunks, and he's using some zipper derived techniques to do that. So it's a really a lovely solution that addresses a very real problem in blockchain systems, and it's just the beginning of what it feels like to run RChain as opposed to running Ethereum or Bitcoin or some of these other networks.
Here's a question, Greg. Has there been an official RCAST about what you're talking about right now? Or a blog post or anything? Because it seems like it would be kind of a significant thing to speak about, especially from your perspective.
Yeah, we want to jumpstart the RCAST again. So yeah, we would like to do that. That would be really good.
I think that would be a great topic, because it seems like something that a lot of people would be interested in and can understand, and it's also optimistic, and optimism is always useful. So so that seems like it would be really interesting. I'm sorry again that we didn't have a guest today. Unfortunately, well, Steve Ross Talbot was supposed to join us, but I'm just going to assume that he got caught up with something else.
No, both his father and his wife's father, they both passed away.
I see. Well, I did know that, but he did confirm that he was going to be joining us anyway. So.
Oh, I see. Okay, my
but that's mistake. Okay. So anyway, we are all sending our best wishes to Steve, and hopefully he can join us another time. And we're also going to have more guests in the future. So nobody from the community reached out about being a guest this week, but hopefully, going forward, we'll continue to have more interesting guests from within and also from outside of the community. So I think that'll be great. Does anybody have any last thoughts? We have a few minutes left.
Well, I just wanted to say, I acknowledge that my friend Bill Rieflin passed this week. Bill was a consummate musician with, he had a perfect pitch and an amazing sensibility. Some people may have heard him because he played as a drummer for REM, the sort of globally famous band. He also played as a drummer in King Crimson, and then later as a keyboardist in King Crimson. Bill was in addition to being a world famous drummer, he was also an incredibly gifted pianist and a great guitarist as well. He didn't suffer fools, but he had an amazing sensibility and a sense of humor, and he was incredibly well mannered and very compassionate. He will be missed.
I remember that I met him I believe in New York City. My brother was on tour with him, and even Greg, you might have been there. But
yes, I was on the same tour.
Yes. So I was in college in New York at the time, and so I got to meet him then. But I also met him a second or maybe third time at the RCHain conference because he came to the performance that we did.
Yes, that's right.
And he was very kind and a very interesting person. So anyway, just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, I pasted in the chat a link. I just put together a piece to mark his passing. So the title I think would appeal to Bill's sensibilities. It's Flying Away Without Looking Back Once.
Did you just record this a couple of days ago, within the past 2 days?
Yeah, in the past 2 days, yeah.
That's wonderful. I'm going to listen to it.
Awesome. Well, you ready to take us out, Nora?
Yes, of course. Thank you both for joining today for the Climate and Coordination call. It's always nice to talk with people because I live alone right now. So I'm quarantined by myself. So I do really enjoy these calls that we're doing. Please subscribe on YouTube. You can become a member of RChain at rchain.coop. And anybody who's listening or who knows somebody who might want to be a guest, please email climate@rchain.coop and you can be a guest on our call. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Nora. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Have a great weekend.
You too.
You too. Bye.